For more on this case, I want to welcome on Neama Rahmani, the president and co-founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers. So Neama, when we look at this case, there's a lot of emphasis on it because of the failed practices of the prior case. A lot of people thought that we were going to get answers. A lot of victims thought they were going to get justice when it came to Jeffrey Epstein. But now the focus is on Ghislaine Maxwell. So now the focus is not only on bringing justice to those victims, but making sure that this trial actually goes through to begin with. So when we're looking at security for her, what does that look like?
Well, she's in paper clothes right now. She has no access to, betting the things that, Jeff Epstein used to kill himself, if you do believe that he killed himself. But, we're talking about two failed prosecutions, right? The first one was when Alex Acosta was U.S. attorney down in Miami and gave Epstein that sweetheart deal. Then federal prosecutors in New York took over, the same folks who are handling the Maxwell case now. Unfortunately, the victims weren't able to get their criminal justice in that case because Jeff Epstein died, but those civil cases against his estate are still ongoing.
No, you're exactly right. And in fact, there's been a series of different events that seems to have facilitated Jeffrey Epstein, whether it's that plea deal that you're talking about, whether it's the idea that these alleged actions took place in some cases in broad daylight among many other people. At least that's the allegations that are being levied against him. And still no answers, no information coming forward. So I think you're right to say that there has been assistance for him throughout his entire practice of this horrible act that he's being accused of. But now the focus is on Ghislaine Maxwell. And in fact, her lawyers are looking at that plea agreement to say that maybe charges can't be brought against her. Is that a plausible argument?
It's a terrible argument because that sweetheart deal only binds the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami, the Southern District of Florida. It has absolutely no bearing on other jurisdictions such as New York or state charges as well. So I understand defense attorneys have to make an argument, but it's not a good one.
Right. And of course, she is going to get, I'm sure, very good attorneys throughout this process. She's someone who doesn't necessarily have a lack of resources when it comes to fighting this case. And I mean, she had properties, millions of dollars worth of properties. She's been traveling across the country, all around the world, actually, ever since these allegations first came against her. So acknowledging all of those points, do you suspect that the court will grant her bond tomorrow?
I expect there will be some bond granted because the government is still asking for a $20 million bond. Her attorneys are asking for a significantly lesser bond, closer to $5 million. But she's worth tens of millions of dollars. She was hiding out on a 100-plus acre ranch out there in New Hampshire. She has at least 3 passports that we know of, money in bank accounts all over the world. So she has significant means. And not only is this conduct dangerous to the community, it's a significant flight risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no question that that she is a flight risk for that very reason, not only acknowledging the allegations that are being made against her, but also recognizing what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. So there's questions right there. I'm sure that she's someone who doesn't want to be buckled down by the confines of the law by any means, but it looks like this is a last hope for many of these victims who do want to get justice and those people who do want to get answers when it comes to this. So when it comes to that too, do you think this is something that will go to trial, or do you think that this is something that maybe there will be a lot of plea deals behind the scenes as far as her maybe turning on other people? I mean, there's rumors about her having videotapes or cell phone conversations, things of that nature. What does it look like before we get to the trial?
It's always possible that a deal is reached, right? I mean, Epstein himself may have gotten that deal down in Miami because he turned on some hedge fund managers at Bear Stearns. I don't know what Maxwell knows, but she should absolutely make a deal because she's looking at a 10-year minimum mandatory sentence. That's the minimum, but a potential life sentence. So we'll see what kind of information she has. But I think based on everything that happened with Epstein, I don't think prosecutors in New York are going to give her a deal. There's going to be so much political pressure on them to throw the book on her. There's so many victims that have come forward now that any type of information she has would have to be overwhelming to get anything less than that 10 years in prison.
And Neama, oftentimes when we look at these trials, the conversations that we have in the media are very different than the conversations that are actually had in that courtroom. The jury, of course, can only look at things that are presented in that courtroom, no outside statements, no outside evidence, none of the speculation that a lot of people see on cable news networks, anything like that. The jury instructions are very narrowly tailored to make sure that justice is served and that there's no outside resources or speculation coming into the case. So when we look at this court case of what will happen, what do you think that will look like? Do you think there will be a lot of witnesses, a lot of evidence brought in? What will that look like?
Yeah, the difficulty with these cases is oftentimes the victims, they don't want to come forward, or if they do, they're terrified to testify. They're embarrassed. They have trauma, and reliving that trauma in front of a jury and media and an open courtroom can be very difficult. But in this case, the government is in a great position because you have at least 3 witnesses that have come forward. They're already pushing their civil cases. So it's clear that you have victims that are willing to testify in this case, unlike other cases involving victims of childhood sexual abuse. So I think the government has an extremely strong case here.
That's good to hear, because I know that for a lot of people, this is the last chance to really get justice, the last chance to really get a lot of answers, especially for those victims that you're talking about right now. A lot of them were victims when they were younger, but now they may be adults. A lot of these events that are taking place happened more than 10 years ago in some instances, but that's not to say that those are the only ones that took place. So that is why this is important, to find out exactly what happened before it's too late. I think you're right to say that. But Neama Rahmani, I appreciate you coming on tonight, breaking down this case for us. Thank you.